Oh, YouTube. Hell, when I filmed this particular segment, for some reason the sound did not record, so I'm going to see if I can fill in the blanks here. Where I'm pointing is where the Greasy Grass River is. This is a story about the Battle of the Greasy Grass, or where Custer met his demise. That line of green trees that I'm pointing at, that is actually where the Greasy Grass is. On the other side was a large village made up of Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Shawnee. And the story actually begins down that way, about 4 miles away. So let's go there and I'll start telling the story. So Custer approached from that direction. He came across a single teepee, and when they investigated, it contained the body of a warrior who was killed in the Rosebud a week earlier. And that's when he made the decision to split his command and send Reno and his men across the river to attack the village. He assumed that he had been spotted, probably had, while he continued, we think, that way. So he went this way around, and Reno and his men went that way across the river. When Reno attacked the village, he was repulsed and headed back this way. They'd send messengers to the mule train and the supply train to come to reinforce him. And they were trying to make their way to join up with Custer that way, which is a couple of miles. They didn't get there. They came and retreated to this spot. So Reno had, over that area, formed a thin skirmish line with his 175 soldiers and civilian personnel and the native scouts, and fired into the village, which was down through here. And after 10 minutes of fighting, well, the warriors raced out, and after 10 minutes flanked him, so he had to get into the timber down in here. And for about 40 minutes he was in a defensive position there. The warriors penetrated the woods, convinced position was untenable. Fighting about 30 minutes, like I said, he retreated across the river and back up into here. Now Reno and his men set up a defensive perimeter trenches while they were fighting off the natives. This fight went on for 2 days, June 25th and 26th, before they were reinforced by another regiment, and then the natives broke off and retreated. They did have like a field hospital up in here somewhere, and unlike Custer, a lot of the troopers survived over here. So another perspective of Reno retreating up through here, and that's where we just were, the battle over there. So you can see shooting from over here. Over there was higher ground, sitting looking down on them. One of the Cheyenne warriors was American Horse. Remember him from Fort Phil Kearny and the Fetterman fight? So I'm at Weir Point, and from this spot, Captain Thomas Weir, Company D, he was trying to locate Custer, and that group of trees and buildings, that's where Custer was, and he saw many horsemen over there in the distance, and he thought, you know, he's gonna join up with Custer over there. And Sergeant Flanagan said, "Here, Captain, you better take a look through these glasses. I think those are Indians." So he may have witnessed the Custer's last moments. So they dismounted the troops here, and when the natives were coming back this way to join the fight against Reno and Bettine, they retreated and joined up with him. So that's 3 miles away, and Reno's a mile back that way. So there's a 4-mile difference, and with the hills in here, one couldn't see the other. This is the first spot where you can actually get a clear shot or a clear view of what was going on with Custer. So where these horses are, this is Medicine Tail Coulee, and this is where Custer stopped his troops, and he sent a message back to the pack train and Bettine to be quick. And Bettine actually ended up joining up with Reno, as I mentioned before. But this, you can see, this goes out to the river, and so took part of his command that way, and part of his command went that way. Why he kept splitting his command, nobody really knows. You got to keep in mind, this was a huge village. There were 6,000 or 7,000 people here, and between 1,500 and 2,000 warriors. And at this point, many of them had guns. Remember, this is 10 years after all the stuff that was going on down in Fort Phil Kearny. So he should have known that they knew how to fight and how to defend their people. Custer had 400 total. He left 175 with Reno, 225, and then he splits them up again to go attack a village that must have been all over through there. Boggles the mind. Initial fighting happened here in these flats, the ford across the river. That whole area was on the other side where you can see the barns. I mean, that was all part of the village. It went all the way through here. Like I said, there was 6,000 people living here, or staying here. So when they came this way, Company E, maybe Company F, approached this area, the natives came running across the river and got in position to fire on them. This bluff over here, the Crow Scouts were up there. They fired down into the village. There was like 3 of them. Fired in the village from the bluff before they left. So this is where the initial fighting, again, this is only part of Custer's command. The rest of them were going behind where I am and where we're headed. So, he said the village laid out through there. It was under political and spiritual leadership of Sitting Bull, and they didn't want to be restricted to a reservation. They wanted to keep up with their nomadic lifestyle. And hey, as a modern day nomad, I can identify with that. The Greasy Grass River runs through there, and Black Elk said that they camped along the south side of the Greasy Grass. It's a very big village. Hardly count the teepees. He said it's approximately 7,000 Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho were down in here. And Two Moons, who's a northern Cheyenne, he said we went over the divide and we camped all along the valley, and everyone thought now we're out of the white man's country. He can live there, we will live here. So along this ridge, with Custer's troops retreating, and the natives position themselves along the ridge. It's known as the Greasy Grass Ridge. And they've found numerous cartridge cases in that area that archaeologists identified as being from native guns. So on this little knoll, which some evidence is that soldiers of Company C occupied this position because they found the bodies of Sergeant Finkel and Finley. Anyway, there's the Indian testimony said that Southern Cheyenne leader Lame White Man led the charge near this ridge, and some people think it was a little bit farther that way, but now from that last spot there, if I don't know if you can see them, but there are markers. There's quite a few on the other side of the road too. This is called Calhoun Hill, and it was where Custer reunited his command, and this is the first place that they tried to defend. But the native warriors chased off their horses, and you can see markers for the dead, but from here across to the last stand hill, it was nothing but a line of bodies and dead horses. So Custer deployed his men. You can see some markers down there that, or maybe you can't, before retreating to what's called Last Stand Hill. Some of his soldiers ran down into this deep ravine right here, and that's the native witnesses to that said that they were running like they were moving their arms like they were running fast, but they were really just walking. And they running down into lower ground is just not what you should be doing. But this is where Lame White Man fell in this area. Just south of the monument, right in this area. When they came in later, after they'd buried the human remains, they found, when they were redoing this. They found the skeletons of 20 horses, and they buried them right here. Because the cavalry had a reverence for their horses. Not much was known about that, and then they were digging a drainage ditch in this area and discovered it. And they've done a couple archaeological digs, but the notes on it, the early one, it seemed to have been misplaced. So right just next to the monument to the troopers is this one to the warriors who fought them here. This was the climax of the battle was here, and the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors surrounded the position, and Lieutenant Colonel Custer and approximately 41 men were all that were left, and they were shot, or they shot their horses to make breastworks, and the several soldiers were found at the crest of the hill, others discovered along the slope, which is here, following the battle. The natives took off their dead to bury or in lodges and scaffolds and in the hillsides, and left the troopers where they lay. Now the markers indicate the approximate position where each one of them fell, but in they were buried by Indian scouts and civilians on June 28th, so a couple days after the battle. In 1877, the officers' remains were removed and taken to Eastern cemeteries. Custer's buried at West Point. There were other 220 soldiers were buried in this area, and this monument, this memorial, is to all of them. And with that, I'll leave you with what I've seen here at the Battle of the Greasy Grass. You wonder why I keep calling it that. My belief is that the winners get to name the battle. The natives called that the Greasy Grass River. Now, white men call it the Little Bighorn. So now you know. No way I told you the whole story of everything here. I'm sure you can read it in books. You can see all kinds of videos in other places. But if you're like me, read extensively about it, now I can put what the places look like into my brain with the story. So I'm gonna get back on the road, see what other interesting things I can find. Probably not as interesting as this, but you never know. See you later, YouTube.
Jumped off the wagon and he spread out his hands. Brace yourselves and come for your women. We will do